The what I want to do today is look at the pasuk that we know very well. These psukim in Devarim are great because a lot of them we know because they form part of like our everyday stuff that we do. And what I want to look at today is the pasuk of benching, the source of benching. So it's Devarim Chet Yud. The Torah says, we all know the words. You'll eat. You'll be satisfied. And then I'm not going to give it a translation because it's a difficult word to translate. We translate it as bless. And you'll bless Hashem on the land that He gave you. And the reason why it's a difficult thing to translate is because all the Mefarshim, in some way or another, make the point, and I'll just share with you the Rabbeinu Bechaya, that the Rabbeinu Bechaya says that the biggest issue is brachot and tzorich gavoa. Hashem doesn't need brachos, so how can I bless Hashem? The reason why we do it is for me, not for Him. Ki barach makora bracha. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is the root of all blessing, of all bracha, of everything in this world. So and all the brachas come from like they tear down from HaKadosh Baruch Hu Himself. So therefore, you can't take a bracha, let's say it starts at, excuse me, there's a Gemara that speaks about the fact that Yerushalayim receives 10 measures of bracha, and then it keeps some of it, and the rest dissipates to the rest of the world. The same as HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Let's say HaKadosh Baruch Hu is level 1, and we receive level 8 or 9, bracha, whatever the level is. I don't know the numbers. But then, how can I then at level 8 then try to be mavarech, blessed level 1? It doesn't make any sense. He says, if that's the case, how can the ones that could that our bracha is not worthy for Hashem. He's the one who brings everything in the world. And the fact that we exist is because He exists. And He doesn't need anything for us for His existence. So if that's the case, in Cain, if we would bless Him all night and all day, what's the value? Or what can we give Him? What can He take from us? Nothing. The whole purpose and the value of brachas is not for Hashem, but rather on us. Now listen to this. He gives us the secret. A person who makes a bracha on that which they are enjoying, who may aid, he bears testimony that when we make a bracha on something, what we're doing is that we are bearing testimony to the hashkacha of Hashem, to Hashem's providence over us, that He brings this food, this sustenance to us who are much lower than Him, in order that we'll live. And it's through the brachas that we make, because we are the one in whose zchut HaKadosh Baruch Hu gives all the fruit and all the produce that exists in this world. When we make our brachas, those things come down in a much more powerful way. The impact or the effect of HaKadosh Baruch Hu on those things is much more powerful. And a person who enjoys something and doesn't make a bracha on that thing, what do? We steal, so to speak, the hashkacha, the concept of this providence of Hashem over that food. And what do? We move away the impact of Hashem on the brachas that we have in this world, and we give them over to what? To mazel. We give it over to the impact of the stars, of the zodiac on the things. In other words, if we are not making these brachas, if we are not somehow bringing HaKadosh Baruch Hu into our everyday existence through the food that we eat, then what we're doing is we're handing over that power to those things which are completely lower than Hashem, meaning the power of magic and things like that. V'zeu shama, and that's why the Gemara says, a person who benefits from this world without a bracha says if he steals from Hashem and from the Jewish people. Why? Because when we don't make the bracha, then we don't bring the hashkocha of Hashem into Am Yisrael and into the fruits of Am Yisrael. And because we don't bring that in, so therefore we're taking away some of the impact that we should be having onto other. And therefore he says, it's that we have to see that the whole world is dependent on us by the brachas that we make. Now that's an interesting idea. That's a beautiful idea. But what's difficult with that is that this is talking about, this pasuk is really talking about what? About Birkat Hamazon, about benching. It's about not talking about before you eat. It's talking about after you eat. But if it's talking about after you eat, what does that mean? How do you enjoy this world without making a bracha when you make the bracha after you? So the Gemara says that we must that we learn a kal v'chomer, and that is if you have to make a bracha after you've eaten, after you're satisfied, after you already you're not needy anymore. How much more so you need to make that bracha before you eat? So we learn a mitzvah d'oraita, the Torah concept of brachas is afterwards, and the d'rabbanan is before. But there is a beautiful Ben Yehoyada, which I'd like to share with you, because the Ben Yehoyada tries to understand this concept of, it says, Ve'achalta v'savata. Ve'achalta v'savata means you eat, and then you're satisfied. Uverachta, and then you make the bracha. But we understand that we don't eat to satiation. That's why the Gemara tells us that although the Torah says that you should eat to be satisfied, Am Yisrael take upon ourselves that even if we don't eat completely, we're not completely satisfied, even if we just have a kazas or kabeitza, depending, right? Then what? We still bench. So the Ben Yehoyada says, I don't understand. Why would we take on such a chumrah? Of benching, and benching is a mitzvah d'oraisa. Why you take on the d'oraisa? Maybe when you're eating so little, you shouldn't actually be making the bracha. And if you shouldn't actually be making the bracha, then it becomes a bracha levatola. And instead of praising HaKadosh Baruch Hu, you're taking his name in vain. So the Ben Yehoyada says the following. He says we have to understand that the reason why Bnei Israel took this on to do something with the food that they do, to be so much stricter, is because there's something about this world which belongs to Esav, which is our nemesis for all intents and purposes. And so therefore, says the Ben Yehoyada the following. Says, Yesh lanu lahashiv, ki HaKadosh Baruch Hu tzivah otanu b'Torah, that Hashem told us, ve'achalta v'savata. Therefore, what does it mean? Nimtza natan lanu reshut. When Hashem said v'achalta v'savata, He gave us reshut. He gave us permission, lisboa, to be completely satisfied, to take this physical world and be satisfied from this physical world. And He didn't say just eat a little bit in order just to stay alive. We understand that there's this concept that the Ben Yehoyada doesn't bring it, interestingly enough, but we have this concept in Pirkei Avot where it says that Kacha Darka Shel Torah, this is the way of Torah, Pas B'melach Toicha, that you should eat your bread with a little bit of salt, Maim B'shur Tishta, and drink a little bit of water and sleep on the floor, and that's the way of Torah. But says the Ben Yehoyada, that's the way of Torah, but it's not the way you have to live. That's the way you can acquire Torah in a much more profound way, and there's ways of understanding that. We don't have time for that now. But the Ben Yehoyada says that just to live as a person, as a Jew in this world, HaKadosh Baruch Hu gives us permission to eat as much as we want, as we need to feel satisfied. After we see that Chazal said up to a kazayt, up to kabeitza, chayav levarich, you have to make the bracha. Says, how could it be that they didn't do this on purpose? Ella vadai. So if you have to understand that whilst we, on a simple level, explained that HaKadosh Baruch Hu gives us permission to eat what we want. Chazal didn't understand that as that. They didn't understand that sphere, that the satisfaction or satiation is complete satiation. They understood that even just to sustain a person, which is the tiniest amount, that's also chashiv sphere. It's considered to be satiation. Therefore, we see that v'savata, when it speaks about v'savata, it doesn't mean complete satisfaction, satiation. Rather, what it means is even a little bit. And therefore, we can understand what is the story, that our eating the small amount, in a way, impacts on our ability to show that we are the more worthy of the spiritual gifts than Esav is. Because we can say to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, you are HaKadosh Baruch Hu, you gave us simply in the pasuk permission to satisfy ourselves to our physical desires. However, we took it upon ourselves through the guidance of our sages to say, hold on a second, that's not what we want to do. For us to sustain ourselves in this world, it's not about sustaining ourselves physically in this world, but we need to bring spirituality in this world. Spirituality comes into the world when we retract from complete physical enjoyment. Then we are able to engage in a space of spirituality. And because of that, therefore, we say, Chazal told us to take on the kazai, to take on just, even if you eat a kazai. And therefore, nearly so it says, therefore, the reason why it says that you should have a kazais or kabetza is also to engage on Shabbos when we have the mitzvah to eat bread proper. We have a mitzvah to eat three times bread. That's the Friday night lunch and sudash tishit. Those are the times that we should really get the schut of the kabetza, even on Shabbos when we eat and we enjoy, and it's part of the enjoyment of Onik Shabbos. Just to bench, all we need is a kabetza or a little kazais. And I think that's a beautiful idea from the Ben Yehoyada. But the Ben Yehoyada then carries on, and he says in another place, he says, how can it be that we focus the brocha on the end part? Why is the brocha the oraisa at the end of the meal, not at the beginning of the meal? So he says a beautiful idea. He says, we understand. Anachnu avadim laHashem yitbarach. We are slaves, servants to Hashem, and we understand there's a halachic concept. Kol ma shekana eved kana rabba. Whatever a slave acquires, the master acquires that. So therefore, if that's the case, he says, Ein la'adam schus ben achasav afilu rega echad. Says if everything that we acquire actually belongs to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, so then we have no real merit to have any enjoyment of the physical things that we acquire in this world. Right, exactly as a slave. Like a slave, it doesn't have any value except from that which his master gives him. But HaKadosh Baruch Hu did a chesed with us. That somehow we're able to acquire that which we have. And how do we see that schut? How do we see that merit that HaKadosh Baruch Hu gives us the ability to acquire that which we have, even though He is our master, by the fact that we have food on our table? So when we have food on our table, what we need to do is we need to recognize that it all comes from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and therefore we make a bracha before. But then he says, once the shulchan is taken away, once the shulchan is removed, the table is removed, then what? Then you're no longer partaking of it, and therefore it goes back, so to speak, to the ownership of Hashem. Because you can't acquire anything, everything goes back to the master. And therefore, whilst we made the bracha before to acknowledge where it comes from, at the end we make a bracha to acknowledge not where it came from only, but where it's going back to the Ribono Shel Olam. And so therefore, in a way, we put our meal in parentheses. we start with an acknowledgement of this on the table should belong to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. He's given me the ability to eat it. He's given me the ownership of it, that I can actually consume something that really isn't mine. If that's the case, therefore I make a bracha and I acquire it that way. But when I hand it back, when I'm finished, the leftovers, right? Those leftovers, then I make a bracha, achroina, I complete that bracha, and in completing that, I complete the meal, and I hand everything back over to the Ribono Shel Olam. Why? And then, please God, the next meal I have, I start that process again. I thought there was some nice ideas to engage with on Birkat Hamazon, which I had never seen before, and I would love to share with you. I hope you enjoyed it, and please God, we'll continue tomorrow. Have a